cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we're expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at advertise@k98talk.org. The leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple.
It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground.
We have serious problems to solve, and we need serious people to solve them.
Republicans and Democrats.
All right, folks, happy Saturday morning. This is Rick Robinson, one half of the crew here at the Finding Common Ground radio show, right here live on K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network, where we can be heard every Saturday at 10 Eastern, 9 Central. I am joined today by my usual left chair counterpart, the crazy liberal teenage one, Mr. Bryce Robbins. How are you this morning, sir?
I am good. It's always fun Saturday mornings. Got to crunch on some pretzels, and now I'm ready to debate, so let's have at it.
Hey, it's a good Saturday morning. You've got the pretzels, I've got the beer. That works out pretty well.
Sounds good to me.
Figured that'd throw you off. All right, so anyway, folks, we have a lot on tap today. For those of you who have not been paying attention to the news, there's been some pretty big changes to our world recently, especially here in America, where up until recently, with things like the Boston bombing and the 9/11 tragedy, we've actually felt pretty safe here for quite some time. I I submit to you today that the time of our safety has pretty much come to a close. We may get into why, but first I want to give Bryce a second here because he said he had a couple things that he definitely wanted to talk about. So I know that usually once I start talking, it gets a pretty big argument going. So I want to make sure that we give him a chance to get anything in that he wants to talk about. So I'll let you open the show for once.
All right. So maybe I can start the argument here.
Well, we already know that's going to happen.
Very true. So, recently I was watching a movie that I encourage people to watch. If it wasn't a terrible movie, it wasn't an excellent movie, it was a low-budget film. But the movie was called Prayers for Bobby. And the movie was about a child. He's a teenager in high school, and he is gay. And this takes place in the 1970s. I believe it was early 70s. But the key fact is that he grows up in a very, very, very Christian household where, being gay is a sin and nothing but. So the mother takes the route, we're going to get you help. We're going to turn this around. We're going to change you and everything. We're going to fix you. And by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, even though I told you to see it, I'm going to tell you what happens. He ends up killing himself. And the mother realizes what she had done. She believes that she had killed her son. She had led him to do this. And now, it's based on a true story. She is, in all these human rights groups, and she leads these human rights groups. She's older now, but I believe her name is Mary Griffith. You can look her up. But, too little, too late. I think that's pretty sick what she did, but that's besides the point. The point was that in the movie, the child Bobby goes to this gay-accepting church. And when the mother finds out, she goes there after his death to talk to the pastors to see what was going through Bobby's mind. Why would he still go to church? All this stuff. And she ends up asking about, she's very obsessed with the idea, is Bobby going to heaven? And, but he was a homosexual and did all these things and whatnot. And the pastor brings up all these other blurbs from the Bible, from Deuteronomy 22, that if a man marries a non-virgin, then she can be stoned at the city gates. But we don't take that literally. And talking about all these things about how I'm trying to remember. There was, if you cheat on your spouse, you get stoned. If you sleep with, if you marry a non-virgin, you get stoned. If a child disrespects his parents, the child is killed. All of these things that we don't abide by. But now let's take the reverse. Radical Islam. People, largely uneducated people, crazy, impoverished, fucking crazy people, are blowing the shit out of each other because they are taking their book to the literal and in some cases even expanding on it. I was reading this article. ISIS was using some terminology in the Quran to justify the raping of children as purifying their souls. Something ridiculous like that. But besides that, they use, jihad. And jihad is the idea of the inner struggle. But in some cases can be used as, violence. Only in the threat against Islam is what they're saying. And then they say that Western culture is a threat against Islam, so thus justifying all this terrorism. My point is here, and then I want Rick to definitely jump in on this, is it's not necessarily Islam that is the problem. It is the people of the Islamic faith, many of these radicals, who are the problem. Because if Christianity, let's just say, was taken to the extreme, then we would have just as much terrorism coming from them than we do from the Islamic faith. So, while I think the culture, the Middle East is in shambles, it is not necessarily the fault of Islam, but rather the fault of poor leadership, dictatorships, oppression, and ultimately uneducation. But Rick, I want your view.
Okay, so first things first, let's kind of start from the beginning. I understand why folks on your side of the aisle tend to like to make the argument that, we wouldn't have near the problem that we have with Islam if they had jobs and good homes and decent water and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's my problem with the argument. It doesn't hold true in the microcosm. If you can't expand something out to a macrocosm and then expect it to not hold true in the microcosm. Case in point, the idiot that just shot up a bunch of people in California. An American citizen living the American dream who had a government job making $70,000 a year, a wife, a child, and enough vacation time that he could take off for months at a time to go wherever he wanted to go. And yet, at some point, he still managed to become radicalized and shoot up a building full of people. And according to the mainstream media, it was probably because it was a Christmas party. And he was triggered because it was a Christmas party. My problem with all of this is the same thing that I've said before. Yes, if we as Christians were still taking the Old Testament literally, then we would have as much extremism and terrorism as there is everywhere else in the world. But the problem is, at some point along the way, there was a break with those teachings. It's called the New Testament. For those of you that may not understand what those words actually used to mean, the Bible itself, which is now referred to as the Old Testament, another word for testament, if you look at the literal translation, was covenant, old agreement. New Testament, new covenant, new agreement. At some point, Jesus basically said, the old covenant has passed away because I am here. These are the rules I now expect you to follow. So there was a change. There was a reformation within the movement of Christianity and also pretty much every other Abrahamic religion at some point or another other than Islam. Islam has had no reformation. They haven't had one. They probably never will have one. But now there's even folks that are Reformed Muslims that are talking about the fact that they need one. So it's interesting that you started the show off with this because I hadn't planned on playing this clip, but it dovetails nicely into what we're talking about. So instead of listening to an old fat white guy bitch about how Islam needs a reformation, let's listen to an actual former Muslim say the same thing herself.
For people that we call moderate Muslims, it's not enough to say that Islam, as a political theology, has nothing to do with ISIS. So you may be a good, peace-loving Muslim who's disgusted by what happened in Paris and what is happening across the world in the name of Islam, but the stance to take is not to deny that these things are not connected to the doctrine of Islam. The stance to take is to say, let's acknowledge that this is part of our Islamic doctrine and tradition. We share this with these terrible people, but the answer to that is to reform it.
But if the majority are moderate, why do you need to reform it?
You have to make a distinction between Islam as a doctrine with a political dimension, that is what people who have established ISIS use, and adherents, the Muslims, 1.6 billion people in the world who identify themselves as Muslim. So for them to protect their faith from the extremists and the violent extremists and even the non-violent extremists who peddle a message of violence and jihad, they have to reform the faith. They have to say, here are things about our faith that are outdated that we don't want to follow.
What makes you think that the kinds of men who cut people's heads off or who detonate suicide vests on themselves are interested in a theological discussion with you?
They are interested in a theological discussion within, not only with me. 10 years ago, I thought I was just a lone voice, but now I see an emerging group of people everywhere who are Muslim, who are saying, listen, we can't deny this any longer. We are pitting ourselves in a world war against the rest of the world. We have to reform our religion. And I think in the long run, that is the only way to end violent Islamic extremism.
I'm very curious, though, as to why you think this would work. I mean, you used to argue that Islam needed to be defeated, that, that this idea of reform could only come after the religion had been put down.
What I have changed my position on what I see emerging are large groups of people. The demonstrations in Egypt made it very clear that there were thousands of Muslims who wanted to call themselves Muslim and identify as Muslim, but did not want Sharia law. We've seen this in Tunisia, but we're also seeing it increasingly in Europe and in the United States. The key thing to do is to organize all of these people who A, identify as Muslim, and B, want to throw out the key aspects within the Quran and Prophet's example, jihad, and this really disgusting attachment to life after death. That's what makes Islam a death cult. If you want to throw that out, then you have to organize around that principle. It is possible. It is a hard way, but it is possible. And these are the people we need to invest in, not the Saudis and the Qataris and the Muslim Brotherhood and all the other organized Salafis that want to convince us that Islam unreformed is a religion of peace. They are lying to us, and they are the conveyor belts for the violent extremists.
When you say you still want to defeat Islam, what do you mean? Do you mean violently?
I mean the doctrine of jihad. The doctrine of jihad needs to be repudiated in the mosque and at school. That needs to be defeated as an idea, the way we defeated National Socialism as an idea. We need to defeat the idea that life after death is preferable to life before death. That idea needs to be defeated.
But do you not see why 1 billion people who are peaceful around the world, who believe they have nothing in common with Islamic State, who they regard as extremists, who believe in terrible things that they do not accept, would just find what you're saying not just absurd, but really offensive?
You have to understand that most of the victims of Islamic extremists are other Muslims. And they're victims in several ways.
Exactly.
But one of them, and I think the most important one is taking young children, boys and girls, and filling their heads, using the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad, filling their heads with hatred for this life, filling their heads with the idea of jihad, with the idea of Sharia. That is what we need. I mean, I'm an ex-Muslim, but there are fellow Muslims, again, who are seeing this happen within their own communities. And that is exactly what we need to face. And this time, I'm happy to say, even though, unfortunately, we are seeing Paris and other disgusting terrorist attacks, but I'm happy to say this time, as opposed to 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that there are more and more Muslims who are connecting the dots in this way. These reformists, these dissenters, these heretics, they are the ones we need to see, to acknowledge, to organize, and to support.
Ayn Hirsi, thank you very much.
All right, so there you have it, straight from an actual Reformed Muslim herself. So I don't know if it actually played it in the clip, but I've heard her say before that she's actually a former Muslim at this point, only because of the fact that she can't deal with the so-called religion of peace that refuses to have a Reformation moment. Now, and this is one of the arguments that I've made all along. When people start pointing back to the stuff in the book of Deuteronomy, I can point forward to the New Testament and basically say, well, this is what Jesus said in regards to everything that you've just said. They don't have the ability to do that. There was a legitimate change in the doctrine of my belief system with the birth, death, and resurrection of Christ. They don't have that. So this has been my problem all along, and the problem of a lot of folks that have actually taken the time to read the Quran, which I have cover to cover. It's a very confusing book. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. It's not something that you can read chronologically because it's not designed that way. So it's just one of those things where, unfortunately, because of the way it's designed, it actually leads to the exact thing that everybody's talking about, because people pick certain passages that really reach out to them, and then they twist them. So that's one of the biggest problems. The other thing that, and this is where people are going to start thinking that I'm crazy, if you trace back the beginnings of this religion of Islam, you can find that despite the fact that when you really want to look at it truthfully, it is an offshoot of an Abrahamic religion. I think it's a twisted offshoot of an Abrahamic religion, though, because if you go back far enough to trace it, you can actually find some beginning scenarios where they talk about the fact that the faith of Islam was actually an offshoot from Abraham directly, but not from Isaac, which was mothered by Sarah and fathered by Abraham, but his other son, I believe his name was Ishmael, who he had with another wife after ignoring the pleadings of God to not do that. And then when Isaac was born, Abraham shunned his other son and removed them from his home.
Interesting.
So
what I would say, though, is that, I mean, that may all be true. Well, from my knowledge, is that the only one of the key differences between Islam, Judaism, and Christianity is that Muhammad was not only a political figure, but a military figure, an emperor, well, not an emperor, but grew an empire, and was a religious figure. Jesus was not two of those, nor was Abraham or Moses or whoever. So I mean, that is a key distinction that Islam is founded on. But interestingly enough, I wanted to bring up the fact that what she is talking about itself is jihad. See, jihad is not just blowing up a building. Jihad is also the Islamic term which refers to the religious duty of Muslims to maintain the religion, to preserve it, to keep it going. In fact, the literal translation means to strive, to apply oneself, to struggle, and to preserve, in reference to Islam. So, the idea to preserve Islam would be, and I kind of agree with you on this one. I think we are not going to see too much arguing on this topic because I think we kind of found common ground here. But that what she talks about is the preservation of Islam because the way it is heading, I mean, we have two distinct groups, people who want to practice it peacefully and people who are misinterpreting it. And, even the idea of misinterpreting it is up for debate. But there needs to be a distinction made, and I think what we need, or what the Islamic community needs, is a figurehead. Someone to rise up and condemn the actions of all of these countries. Saudi Arabia's beheadings and Bahrain and ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram, all these groups, and say this is not what Islam is. That's what I genuinely think this reformation will come from, is when a Islamic leader stands up and says enough is enough.
And you know what will happen to that Islamic leader when they do that?
He will get his head cut off.
Pretty much. I mean, let's be real, because you brought up an interesting point about possible misinterpretation. To quote Obi-Wan, everything is true from a certain point of view. The issue is it ultimately depends on your point of view. From the point of view of the Islamic extremists, the pacifist Muslims are misinterpreting the Quran. From the point of the pacifist Muslims, the peaceful, the go along to get along Muslims, the one who's just like, look, I just want to practice my religion and pay my bills and put food on my table. That's what I'm trying to do here. From their point of view, the extremists are misinterpreting. But again, my problem is we don't honestly know which one of these two groups is legitimately misinterpreting anything because they haven't had any type of a Reformation movement. There's nowhere that specifically says, hey, genius, you've got it wrong. I told you to love your neighbor as you love yourself, not stone them because they did something you didn't agree with.
Well, Bill Maher once said something interesting.
Oh, God.
It was in reference to all the Bibles of the world.
Oh, God.
I mean, no, I know he says a lot of colorful things, but this one was rather interesting.
I don't know.
And it goes along with your idea of Reformation.
Said Bill Maher.
He says, would you swim in a pool if it had a shit in it? And then obviously everyone says no. And then he says, well, the Christian Bible and the Quran both talk about having slaves, talk about stoning, talk about, killing sodomites and doing all these things to people just for being who they are. And these, in our modern day culture, are considered shits within that pool of our population, of our society. So his question is, why do we swim in this pool with shits in it, rather than fish them out and shock the pool? Which, I think, his idea of shocking the pool is eradicating religion. I think our idea is Reformation. I very much enjoyed that clip that you played. And I would be interested in reaching out to that lady for potentially an interview. I mean, she sounded very interesting to talk to.
I'll see if I can find her contact information for you. But, the interesting thing about the folks like Bill Maher is they're the first ones that say, you know what, we've gone past the point of needing religion any longer. We don't need it. We've outgrown it. I couldn't disagree more. The simple fact of the matter is, if anything, I think we need faith more now than ever, especially with the time that we live in, because I'm going to tell you, from a Christian perspective, now is a very scary time, because there's a certain book at the back of the Bible. If you haven't read it lately, I suggest you might want to do so, where they talk about this rise of this group that would basically start going around and saying, convert to my religion or die, and start chopping people's heads off. That's happening today, right now, as we speak, in parts of the world. Up until now, it hasn't really come here, but now it's starting to. We've seen the things like the Boston bombing. We've had 9/11. Now we've got this incident in San Bernardino where you have people that for 36 hours were perpetuating the narrative that it had to be workplace violence. It had to be workplace violence. There were folks in the media that were beside themselves doing a happy dance because they thought they could prove the point that it was white Christian extremists that did it. There are clips over and over again where folks that were in the media were talking about the fact that this incident happened 2 miles away from Planned Parenthood. It was obviously a government facility that was being attacked, or government employees. So maybe it was a radical cell of some militia group here in America. It had to be white people, or it had to be workplace violence, because there's no way that we could admit that terrorism is coming here. Because here's the really scary thing about all of this, and we'll actually get to this a little bit more when we come back from the break. But the really scary thing about all of this is one of the people that was involved in this, one was female. You know, anybody remember the president making fun of us over here on this side of the aisle because, all of a sudden they're afraid of widows and children? No, but I am afraid of the fact that you don't know who's been radicalized and who hasn't been. And then his answer to that was, well, we have this really stringent screening process, so there's no way anybody that's radicalized is going to make it across our border with the screening process that we have in place. This woman actually came in from Saudi Arabia. She married a U.S. citizen. She went through the exact same screening process that he's been touting for the last 3 weeks. And yet she was able to pledge allegiance to ISIS on social media and then shoot up a building before anybody knew what happened.
Do we know for a fact that she went through the same screening process?
Yes.
Interesting. I figured perhaps because she married an American citizen, it might help her case. But
no, they still put them through the exact same screening process. It's the same screening process regardless. It's the same one they use all the time, every time. And the simple fact of the matter is that screening process doesn't work. But a part of it, again, is we have this mindset in this country that, and this is predominantly from your side of the aisle again, that if we can just make sure that these people are well-adjusted, well-received, they've got jobs, they've got homes, they've got cars, they won't want to kill us any longer. This guy proves beyond a shadow of doubt that at least at the microcosm level, that theory is wrong. And if it won't play out at the microcosm level, it's not going to work at the macrocosm level. We could ship food over there. We could help them build houses. We could help them build schools. They are still going to hate us because there is a large segment of this population that thinks we are evil incarnate, and the only way to deal with evil incarnate is to wipe it off the face of the earth. The other problem is even the folks in that group that don't go that far with it believe that the only way that they can bring about the return of their Messiah is to bathe the world in blood. They've tried it before. They're going to keep trying it till it works. They've been trying it for hundreds of years. This is not a new fight. This has been going on for generations. Everyone that wants to tout how bad the Christian Crusades were and how it was a dark time for my religion, which I agree it was a dark time for my religion. But if you go back and you research what actually started it, what actually started the Christian Crusades? What was it a response to? Do you know the answer? Because I do.
From my knowledge, it was Muslims taking over trade routes and charging excessive taxes. So all the Christian nations got together and said, fuck these taxes, and killed all of them.
But that's the way to look at it from the economic perspective. But the same thing was going on then that is going on now. Muslim nations were storming into other nations, demanding taxation or conversion. It's the same thing that's happening in cities in Iraq right now. They're going into cities and saying either you will convert, you will die, you will pay an excessive amount of taxes, or you will leave. Those are your options. The same thing was happening then. So as that group continued to grow and continued to gain power, the Christians got together and said, this cannot stand, this will not stand, we have to do something about it. So did they go too far with it? I mean, did we have Christian Crusades versions of Jack Bauer? Yeah, probably. But that's what happens when you go to war. War is not a pretty thing. It's not supposed to be a pretty thing. The more vile and disgusting we can make it, the less likely we are to continue to repeat it. That's part of the problem with this country today. We have sanitized war down to the point where now we don't even have people going into harm's way half the time because they're blowing buildings up from 3,000 miles away via remote control. War is hell. It should remain hell because it makes it harder to do. The fact that we have a radicalized group of people that don't care if they die because they think they're going to get 72 virgins, and Lord knows that's probably better than the goat they had sex with last week. But at the same time, we have on the other side of the fight, we have folks that are using machines to fight people now. So they don't care what happens because they're 3,000 miles away, completely detached from it. They're playing a video game for all they care.
I mean, yeah. But we do need, that sense of safety for our troops. I mean, I wouldn't stop the use of drones if that's what you're saying.
Well, no. Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily stopping or saying that I advocate the stopping of drones. If you really wanted my honest take on war, I wish we could find a way to go back to the point where we were using nothing but swords, because you have to look somebody in the eye to stab them. There's no way to put the genie back in the bottle, and I understand it's never going to happen. But if I had my druthers, I would much rather have to be looking someone in the eye when I'm fighting with them, because then it makes it a hell of a lot more personal than it does when you're blowing shit up thinking you're playing a video game from 3,000 miles away.
Fair enough.
All right. So on that note, we got to take a break. Anything else you want to say on the way out?
Let me think. Bernie Sanders 2016, obviously. Oh, no, Lincoln Chafee 2016.
Really? I'm going to Lincoln Chafee you in a minute.
They say we offer simple answers to complex problems, but perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple.
It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground.
We have serious problems to solve, and we need serious people to solve them.
Republicans and Democrats.
It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground.
The internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started again.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hung over from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
The staff of K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network is proud to announce that our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson has been selected as one of the top conservative talk show hosts in the nation for his program America Off the Rails. Again, congratulations to Rowdy Rick Robinson for a job well done and another reason to stay connected to K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
Our military service members volunteer to protect us in the most dangerous places around the world. They step up. And when they are severely ill or injured, returning to their families is only the beginning of their long road home. Wounded Warrior Project provides these brave men and women whatever they need to continue their fight for independence at no cost for life. So now it's time for a grateful nation to step up. Join us at findwwp.org.
It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground.
All right, folks, we are back. We are live. This is Finding Common Ground. I am one half of the crew, Mr. Rick Robinson. Left host is Mr. Bryce Robbins. Now, when we went to break, we were actually starting to do a bit of a discussion about the incident in San Bernardino and some of the crazy comments that have been going on or around that. Now, I have one that I want to play in a second, but just to throw a bit of an audible in here and throw Bryce off just a little bit, I want to play you a montage of some of the crazy things that I've already touched on a little bit that the media was saying all around this incident that happened just the other day. Back before we knew pretty much anything of what was going on, they had already formed their own opinions, even complete with some clips from government officials. So just sit back, relax, shake your head in disbelief.
Are we mature enough as a country to look in the mirror and say we have a gun problem? You know, a 12-step program starts with you got to acknowledge you have a problem. Are we mature enough to acknowledge that?
Then what could it be?
It could be some right-wing group, for all I know.
And attacking a government function. If it's county employees having some type of a banquet there, that takes on more of a domestic militia group, an anti-government domestic militia group wanting to attack the government.
Well, we can tell you that the Planned Parenthood actually of San Bernardino is only a few blocks away.
We know how to fix it. Congress resolutely refuses to do it. But I think
that the president also, showing signs of the frustration we've seen from him so many times. He spoke at the funeral for the victims in Charleston. He spoke out in Washington State. He has spoken after Sandy Hook, always coming out calling for more measures to make it more difficult for people to have access to kind of weapons that can pull off these kind of mass shootings. It's been one of the great frustrations of his presidency.
Some may be aware of the fact that we have a no-fly list where people can't get on planes, but those same people who we don't allow to fly could go into a store right now in the United States and buy a firearm, and there's nothing that we can do to stop them.
In a situation like this, very often the perpetrators intend to commit, murder or suicide by cops. So whether or not there are armed guards there, it's not going to make any difference.
Does this go back to our revolution? We're revolutionary people. We really don't believe in government.
This was a holiday party. Maybe it was called a Christmas party. I mean, there's so many potential triggers here.
And there's always that voice that comes out and says, oh, this particular fix wouldn't have done anything about it, so let's do nothing. Yeah. And that bystander voice is a voice of evil. Shooters are evil, but people who stand by and do nothing and say nothing can be done to fix problems, that's a voice of evil too. All
right, so just let all of that wash over you for a second. You heard folks in the media talking about the fact that, well, obviously because they were attacking government people, that was obviously a militia group. Hey, there's a Planned Parenthood right down the street. Or maybe, just maybe, this all happened because they called it a Christmas party. He was triggered because it was a Christmas party. Are you flipping kidding me?
Yeah, no. Those are stupid comments.
I don't understand. And then you have, let's back things up just a little bit as soon as I can actually find the clip. Or actually, no, hang on. I want to play this one first. We'll get to your little love interest in a second. This one has to be one of my favorite ones, and it's kind of short, so I may play it twice.
Sensible gun laws work. We've proven it in California, and we're not going to give up. Sensible gun laws work. We've proven it in California, and we're not going to give up.
Well, damn, I guess it's too bad that the folks in San Bernardino, Toledo, Ohio didn't have sensible gun laws. I mean, come on. Where the hell is San Bernardino? I'm in flyover country, so maybe my geography lesson sucked. But last time I checked, San Bernardino's not in Nevada. It's not in Ohio. It's not in Illinois. It's in friggin' California. So how are those sensible gun laws working out for you now? Because everything that this administration is saying that they want for the rest of the country, California already has. Did it stop anything? No.
Well, we should look at the overall guns violence in California. But then you could also take into account cities like Compton, and then you would probably dismiss what I just said, and I probably would too. No, I would definitely say it's not guns that are the issue. While we could use some more sensible gun control, guns aren't the issue. And when I say gun control, I just mean background checks. I mean no terrorists getting guns. People who have been checked into mental institutions forcibly should lose their Second Amendment rights. And people who are on any type of mental, drug that affects your psyche should not have access to a gun until they're off that drug and a doctor is approving it. Those are just some key steps, and that's what I mean by gun control. What we really need, though, is psychological control. I know in New Jersey, we have some pretty strict gun laws in the sense that every year you have to go get psychological testing. Now, is that really effective? Perhaps. Something could happen within the course of the year, but what happens if something happens in between? There are so many what-ifs, essentially rendering it pointless. But I think some of the things that I just laid out there are crucial gun control reforms that we can get at. Mental illness reforms are another thing we should get at. And I think the problem with liberals is that we focus far too much on restricting gun access and saying no guns, no guns, no guns. And on the flip side, you have Republicans who are, well, at least on the Hill, showing, we need guns in schools and guns in playgrounds and guns everywhere. And like you always say,
guns for everybody.
Truth is somewhere in the middle. What was that?
Guns for everybody.
Guns for everybody. Exactly. And I genuinely think that the key is somewhere in the middle. But it's not necessarily the gun, and we don't need to put guns everywhere. It'd be nice to go somewhere and have, the feeling like, okay, good, there's no guns here. I don't need to live in fear that there might be some crazy person.
Oh yeah, because because the gun-free zones work so well, brother. I mean, come on, dude.
Here's the thing: I don't want to live in the Wild West where some asshole.
We already live in the Wild West. I mean, that's the point nobody wants to talk about. None of this has actually changed. You can put signs up all over the place that say, "Hey, guns aren't allowed here." The only people that are going to ignore those signs are the people that want to hurt you.
Well, the thing about gun-free zones, besides the fact that
they don't
law-abiding citizens don't bring guns there, is that you can charge criminals more intensively. I know in my town is so small, or 1.5 miles wide and long, that since there are 3 schools spread out throughout the town, anywhere that you have a gun in this town, you can technically get charged for being in a gun-free zone, which is my liberal town's way of saying no guns in this town. Which is interesting, and I wonder if that actually went to court, what would happen. But the problem is not that there's too much gun control, too little gun control. It's mental illness control. And yes, I do think there are some obvious, provisions, like I said, that we could take, steps we could take that I think are sensible. Like Obama said in that clip you played, somebody who's on the no-fly list probably should have their gun rights taken away. I mean, I don't know. What's your view?
And do you honestly think that somebody that's on the no-fly list is going to pass a background check?
No, absolutely not.
Then, well, that's my point. Because we know that, number one, if you're on a no-fly list, that means your Social Security number or whatever identifier number that you use has been added into a national database. So when they go to buy a gun legally, and every single state pretty much has some form of background check, to something as simple as the guy at the gun shop picks up a phone, runs your number, and they say, yeah, you're good, or no, you're not. The simple fact of the matter is, he lied. Because if you're on a no-fly list, you're going to get flagged. Because the reason you're on the no-fly list is because you are, or you have the same name as a potential terrorist. I used to work for an airline. I understand what the no-fly list is, and I understand what it does. The simple fact of the matter is it puts you on a registry that will keep you from failing or keep you from being able to pass a background check without more explicit scrutiny. And one of the ways you get around that is they give you a number that you can give to verify that you were not the person that was named on this no-fly list. So that's my whole point. The president flat out lied to the American people, and there are too many people that don't understand how that stuff works that don't realize that he just lied to them to prove a point. Our politicians lie to us every single day. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on any longer. They're lying to us to perpetuate whatever side of a narrative that they're on, and that's the only thing they give a damn about, and we're the ones that continually get caught in the middle. And this is another prime example of that. I have a clip from the White House press secretary the other day talking about the same thing that we're talking about now.
President Obama yesterday jumped to say that this mass shooting means it's time for common sense gun laws. Does the president really think that common sense gun laws would deter terrorists now that he has admitted these two may have been terrorists?
Yes. The president believes that passing common sense gun laws that makes it harder for people with bad intentions to get guns makes the country safer.
But so the president thinks that when there are potentially two terrorists sitting around planning a mass murder, they may call it off because President Obama has put in place common sense gun laws.
Well, Peter, we're still learning of the precise motives of the individuals who carried out this heinous act of violence yesterday. One thing we do know is that the 4 firearms that they were wielding were legally purchased under the laws that are in place now.
No, they weren't.
That's a fact. So that might lead some to conclude that we should have made it a little bit harder for them. Would that have changed the entire outcome? We're still investigating the situation. But I guess the question is, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we make it harder for them? What's the explanation for that?
Okay, so just for fun, when we go off the air today after Bryce's show, for those of you that like to hang out after that one, I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to Google the following phrase. How hard is it to get an automatic weapon in California? Because that's what they're talking about. These weapons that they used were supposedly purchased legally. It's nearly impossible to get a hold of one of those weapons in the state of California, and yet somehow they managed to do it. And the White House's assertion is that they did it legally. I completely disagree with that statement, because there's almost no way to have gotten one of those weapons legally without it being modified illegally afterwards. Because do you know how hard it is to actually get an automatic weapon in this country? You have to pass not only state and local background checks, you have to pass a federal freaking background check to get a permit to even be able to own an automatic weapon in this country, because they're not something that's considered for common use. Now, there are versions of those guns that are considered single-fire weapons that are a little bit easier to get a hold of, but it is still a felony to modify the damn things. So again, if the law was going to stop them, why didn't the law stop them? And the same things that he's talking about in this presser are that the president wants for the entire country. The place where this incident happened, they already had them, and it didn't stop a damn thing. And it's not going to, because we cannot control the hearts and minds of our enemies. We can't dissuade them when they think that we are evil. There's no way to. We can buy them cookies and cake and take them out for ice cream and try to show them the great things that this country has to offer. They don't care, because in their hearts they think we are evil.
Even if we give them chocolate chip?
I'm game, but I'm telling you it ain't gonna work.
Damn it. Not even sprinkles?
I don't know. The sprinkles might do it. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I figured. Whipped cream, maybe. But
right. So we are running a little low on time. So the show has actually gone in a slightly different direction than I wanted. Bryce, I'm going to give you a second to rebut, since I went on a bit of a tirade. Then I have one last clip I definitely want to get to, mainly because I'm concerned for you and your future, because I know you're about to head to college. I want you to hear something.
Fair enough. So just to quickly refute, I would say that, well, I think you're right, and I think the solution is not take everyone's guns away. That is most certainly a stupid knee-jerk reaction. I do think that there are common-sense gun laws that we can take, and they're not going to deter terrorism. That is not going to stop it. Surveillance and security is going to stop that. But I do think there are common steps we can take to minimize crime that is, in a sense, taken on by legally purchased guns. But the main crux of what we need to figure out is how to stop the mentally ill and how to stop terrorism. And that's through surveillance and mental illness screening, which I don't know how that would really work.
All right. So, there's an interesting take that I found on a news story from a professor out of, I think it was UC Berkeley, actually. I'm pretty sure he violated about 8 to 10 different rules of his particular campus, but he used his classroom to hold a bit of a discussion that had absolutely nothing to do with the subject, because this guy's like a biology professor or something. But it's a fairly lengthy clip, so I wanted to make sure that we got to it. Well, by lengthy, I mean I think it's like 3 or 4 minutes. But basically, he outlines exactly what he thinks should happen and exactly who's at fault for this recent incident in California.
San Bernardino, which must be making a lot of you sick and fearful and everything else. I shouldn't be going off on this because this doesn't have anything to do with gun control or the NRA, but it's perhaps worth saying because there's so many freshmen in the class. And I know that over time, many of you are going to want to get engaged in a cause. And if I were your age and knew what I think I know today, sometimes not very much, what I would do is probably jump on this gun issue. It is an impossible thing in this country for reasons that just boggle my mind every time I think about it. I'll give you a couple of examples. We're in a situation where Australia had a situation like ours a number of years ago. And Australia said, look, we're just losing too many people like they're losing in the U.S. The numbers were much lower because Australia is so much smaller than the U.S. Australian government went out and bought guns from everybody. Now it is extremely difficult to buy a gun in Australia, and very few people get killed. You don't see the kind of thing happening like happened in San Bernardino yesterday, or has happened in so many places in this country. We seem to be getting about one of these mass killings, about every, 10 to 12 days. In fact, there was an article in the paper that said literally, and I'm not exaggerating, it said we've got one of these going on somewhere in the country of varying intensity every single day. 33,000 people a year are dying from gunshot wounds. Well, the big culprit is a couple things. It's the NRA, the National Rifle Association, which is enormously powerful in this country in a way that you and I can't imagine. And it all hinges on an argument that has never made any sense to me. What's the argument? The argument is, look, people don't kill because they've got a gun. They kill because they're unstable. There's something mentally wrong with them. But look, we're all sort of off the edge at some point, right? We don't know when we're going to fly off the edge. And what does the issue become? The issue becomes, do we have access to a gun, or an AK-47, or an automatic rifle? If we don't have access to the damn thing, we can't kill anybody. We might beat the out of them. We might cut them up with a knife, but we're not going to kill 14 people and put another 17 people in the hospital. Some of them in critical condition out here in San Bernardino. Horrible, horrifying, awful stuff. And imagine how many people got affected by this rampage yesterday. Probably 300 or 400 people when you consider brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, friends. An enormous hit, to say nothing of the fear factor. What's at issue? Number one, we've got the Second Amendment. When would the Second Amendment come in? The Second Amendment to the Constitution came into play at the end of the 18th century, when you know what kind of guns we had? We had a muzzle load. It took 5 minutes to load the damn thing, and then, unless I was this close to somebody, I couldn't hit him. It was impossible. We're not dealing with a muzzle load that takes 5 minutes to load. We're dealing with automatic weapons that are just bang, 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 bang. And like that, you can kill 12, 14 people. Horrible stuff. So, what's my pitch? If you want a cause, get on a bandwagon to get these guns outlawed and to do something about the Second Amendment, okay? Sorry for the preaching.
So, speaking as someone who's been in college to someone who's about to go to college, how would you feel if you had to sit through something like that in a biology class?
I am going to answer this question with an experience I had yesterday during one of my debates. When I walked into a classroom in a school that wasn't mine, and there were communist posters hung up all over the classroom. And when I asked what was this, I was told that the teacher was a devout Russian communist and their teacher. So, I don't really like when teachers give off their viewpoints when it's not objective and when it's not, trying to hit at a deeper question. Now, this teacher seemed to, in the end, pose an alternative. I mean, he was really saying, it's up to you. You need to do something about this. Not necessarily stating, we need to take everyone's guns away. I mean, I think that's his opinion. But his statement was, you need to jump on the bandwagon of doing something. And I, to an extent, agree. I saw a wonderful advertisement put together by, I think it was Mothers Against Gun Violence, where this man walks in. I think we've talked about this before. A man walks into an office, and the lady at the front desk is saying, "Sir, you need to sign in," and he ignores her. And she starts following him, and then he goes up to a man and shoots him, and he has a musket. And then the guy realizes that he wasn't shot, and everyone starts running away, and there's papers flying everywhere, and then he is reloading his gun. And then a blurb comes up that says, "Guns have changed, shouldn't our laws?" And to a large extent, I can agree with that. But the clear problem is it's not necessarily the gun, it's the people. But I understand his argument. I liked his argument. Is it appropriate in a biology class? I don't know. I mean, I can.
So wait, hang on. We're almost out of time, but I want to touch on something very important. So you like the fact that he was basically telling the students in his class that they should find a way to outlaw guns and do something about the Second Amendment.
I like that I can't say that he was, going off topic to preach his own crap. We don't know what the previous conversation was.
Now we're going to justify what he said because you don't know the whole argument. So no, I want you to state this for the record. On the air, you agree with the fact that 3 times in that conversation, he said, if you want to become involved in a cause, I suggest you jump on this bandwagon because we have got to do something about guns and gun violence. I suggest you do that by making sure that you find a way to make sure that guns are illegal and to do something about the Second Amendment. So you're fine with a college professor sitting in a classroom indoctrinating his students. That's what you're telling me.
No, but what I do support is the idea that he was questioning a current standpoint and telling kids, go do something about it. Now,
he wasn't telling them to go do something about it. He was telling them specifically what they need to do about it, which aligned with his particular beliefs. That's my problem. Don't tell your students, this is what I think and this is what you should do. You should tell your students, this is what I think and this is why I think it, and now you need to go form your own opinion, not jump on a bandwagon and please, oh please, oh please, do something about these evil, nasty guns and this crazy-ass Second Amendment before somebody else dies, which is what he said. Using his same logic about the musket, we could apply the same thing to the First Amendment. When the First Amendment was first visualized, all we had was the printing press. We didn't have social media. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have blogs. So what you're telling me is that since that technology has changed, maybe the First Amendment needs to be looked at for change as well. But nobody wants to make that argument because the First Amendment is sacred. But we don't need guns because guns are evil.
But it's also not killing people.
It's not?
No.
How many people have committed suicide over shit that's been said to them on social media?
But we've taken laws to justify that. We have done that. So in a sense, we have...
And yet it still happens every single day. Does it not?
I mean, the Supreme Court has upheld the idea that technically hate crime is allowed, but we've also taken preventative laws to prevent...
But yet it still happens because we have gun laws, do we not? We have background checks, do we not? Yet these things still happen. There are people that take social media to an extreme and belittle and bully people to the point where they feel they have no other choice but to commit suicide. So we've taken steps, we've created laws, but that hasn't fixed the problem. So when are we going to outlaw the Second Amendment the same way this douche nozzle saying that we need to outlaw the First Amendment the same way this douche nozzle saying we need to outlaw the Second? Because the laws aren't working. It's broken. The technology has changed. We don't just have a printing press anymore. The simple fact...
the argument, though, if you read the Second Amendment, technically we should have the rights to tanks and drones and C4s because we're supposed to have access to every single weapon that the military has. But you know
what? Who says that we shouldn't?
We don't.
Who says we shouldn't?
Me. I don't
Well, last I checked, you're not the end-all and be-all deciding factor in this country. So again, who says that we shouldn't?
Well, clearly government has, and the people have spoken that, many, like 93% of people want expanded background checks. I don't think they want people driving around.
Okay, so again, I ask you a question because California has expanded background checks. How'd that work out the other day?
We can't take one isolated incident and say...
Yes, we can.
No, we can't.
Yes, we
don't know how
can.
many
It's the same difference between a macrocosm argument and a microcosm argument. It's the same thing that I've been saying all week. The simple fact of the matter is California has the exact same thing that this president says we need nationwide, and it's not going to work. And you know why it's not going to work?
How much crime is it prevented, though? We won't know.
How much crime is it prevented? Have you looked at the gun stats around the country? Look, they've been putting maps up all week. You know where all the red dots are? In all the places that have the most stringent gun control. You know where there aren't very many red dots? Places where they don't have very much gun control. So you explain to me how that's working.
First of all, populations are different, various around the country. I mean, if I was going to hit a place for terrorism, I'd target New York, New Jersey.
I'm not
California.
just talking terrorism, and neither are these statistics. They're talking about gun violence in general. You know where it happens more? In places where there's more gun control. Can we continue to blame population? Yeah, sure. If you want to continue to justify the fact that these arguments don't make any damn sense, sure, go right ahead. But the simple fact that
say the people who commit most of these crimes are right-wing Christian nutcases.
Oh, whatever.
But we're not targeting them. I mean, that's the point is that we can't just keep going after these statistics and saying, you know, this isn't doing anything. This is the problem. This is not the problem. It makes no sense. The problem is clear. We have a problem with gun violence in this country. The question on how to deal with
have a problem with
somewhere in the middle.
We have a problem with violence in this country. And if banning guns was the answer, then why are they now banning knives in Britain?
Well, I can't tell you why they're banning knives in Britain. I know they don't have guns in Britain.
You know why I can tell you why they're banning knives in Britain, because guns are so hard to come by in Britain that now the folks that are trying to attack each other are doing it with knives. You can't even go into a store in Britain anymore and see a knife and a chopping block. They're kept behind lock and key.
I would so much rather all of these gun nuts who go shoot up places have a knife than a gun. Because then, I guarantee you, we wouldn't have as many deaths.
So, Mr. I'm a gun right agreeing liberal has basically just done a complete 180 on the show today, folks, because as far as he's concerned, if it makes the public more safe, we shouldn't have guns.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
That's exactly what you're saying.
No, it's not. I'm saying that we have a problem with gun violence. To say,
No, we have a problem with violence in general in this country. We have a problem with violence in general around the world. There are more people that are beat to death with a hammer on a daily basis around this world than there ever are people shot with guns. Because we have an anger issue all the way around the planet. And it ain't just in America, boys and girls. The issue that we have right now is we need to focus on what actually matters. What is not going to fix this problem is even more gun laws, because we already have the laws in place. And the thing that none of you want to think about is these same people that break the law to get the guns in the first place don't give a damn what we make illegal.
Well, of course that is true. And of course, I mean, I'm agreeing with most of what you've just said. But the fact of the matter is, yes, we have a violence problem. But in the United States, and solely the United States, we have a systemic problem of violence that is being expressed through the shooting of thousands of people. It seems every day there's a new gun story. But all across the world, in all these other developed nations, we don't see these problems. I'm not saying ban guns. Never saying that. What I am saying is we don't need, to free up the gun laws so that people can just go walk into a store and within a day they have a gun. It's ridiculous. Guns have changed. Laws should too. Laws should adjust to the technology. And I'm not saying...
And again, back to the argument I've made all damn day, California has the laws you're talking about. How did that work out there?
I'm going to keep saying the same thing. We don't know how many things that has prevented. We don't know how many cases that has stopped. We don't know. So therefore, we can't give the argument, thus these aren't working, because one nutfuck decided to shoot up...
Hey, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Homework for next week, because don't forget, I am actually one of your teachers. I want you to look up the gun violence statistics in California. We'll discuss them next week, because I'll have the same information in front of me, because I'm going to make you put your damn money where your mouth is, because I'm telling you right now, those laws that Barbara Boxer was just talking about didn't fix a damn thing. And this was proof of it, and I can show you the other proof, but I want you to find it on your own. So next week, we will continue this discussion right here, because I'm not done with this yet, because I'm so tired of your side of the aisle saying, well, all of you people that don't want more gun control are a bunch of fucking morons. No, I'm the guy telling you that statistically speaking, gun control doesn't work. Statistically speaking, gun control makes it worse. And we're gonna talk about it next week, because we're out of time. It's time for your show, so I'm gonna go find something to calm myself down, because when I'm done with your show, I have technicians coming out all day, so I can't continue to be a raving lunatic. So, yay, fun times for me.
All right, it's a date. Sounds good to me.
They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple.
It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.